we think that Malaysia's economy will continue to be stagnant and entirely reliant on the western side of the world. We think that this change is something that's extremely needed if we want our economy to truly boom and develop the best that it could. But a few things here before I move on to my arguments then. First, on setup. What does our world look like? We support today's motion on Malaysia's entry into BRICS. Understand that Malaysia is already in the process of joining BRICS, and we think it's in the best interest of the economy of Malaysia to join BRICS, politically and economically, not ideologically, to enhance our economic growth and development. I'll elaborate more on this later in my arguments, but first let's talk about what BRICS is. The concept of BRICS emerged as a symbol of a shifting global economic landscape, highlighting the growing influence of emerging economies beyond traditional Western nations. We think that the objectives of BRICS directly is in our best interest of Malaysia if we want our economy to truly boom. We tell you the first objective of BRICS is economic cooperation. That they're able to enhance economic growth, trade, and investment among all the member countries here, which the 5 countries are Brazil, Russia, India, and China and South Africa. We think that they're in our best interest and they're able to cater to our needs then, hence on our point on economic growth. But secondly, here on political influence, we think that we're able to create a counterbalance to Western-dominated institutions like the IMF or the World Bank, for example. Then 3 here, on developmental goals. We think that it's in our best interest and our goals also align to address issues like poverty, inequality, and sustainable development. And we think that we are also able to cater to a de-dollarization when we enter BRICS. We think that the achievements of BRICS already proved enough here, and we say that we should join this for all the achievements that they've done. Number 1, on New Development Bank, like NDB, right? When they established in 2014 to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and other emerging economies. We tell you that this success and achievement already proved that BRICS will be very likely to succeed, and it's already succeeding now. But secondly, on contingent reserve arrangement, where it's created to provide support through liquidity and precautionary instruments in response to short-term balance of payment pressures. We say that then, lastly, trade and investment here, we've already seen a significant increase in intra-BRICS trade and investment. We tell you that these are the benefits that we want to claim on our side of the house because we think that our economy will be likely to succeed then. But a second part of my setup will be why Malaysia would join BRICS then. We think that Malaysia will join because right now economy is booming and it won't wait for us to play catch up. We think that the economy will be something that will constantly be developing even in Malaysia and outside of the country. And we think that being entirely reliant on the Western won't be in the best interest of our side because our main goal here is to join BRICS to be less reliant on Western countries. For this reason, right, we think that the role of BRICS in the global economy and potential to drive global economic growth is very important in today's debate. I'll elaborate on this later in my argument, but we think Malaysia, a developing country, should join it because there's a huge gap between USA, Western countries, and our country, right? We tell you BRICS will give us the development we need, and we tell you that we do not need to rely entirely on the US anymore because we don't want them to be the mastermind of the economy because then it'll become an authoritarian system that inherently exploits us. I'll give you an example here, right, with US and Afghanistan, where US helped Afghanistan in exchange for cheaper oil rates, but when Afghanistan said no, US inherently exploited them. We tell you here that on their side of the world, right, they have to prove why it's so bad, why Malaysia's entry to BRICS is so bad, and they have to propose an alternative that will help us economically. Our burden here is to prove why our entry to BRICS is so beneficial and significantly benefits our economy, and we have to prove to you why whatever our entry to BRICS brings will be insanely beneficial for our world on our side of the house. But let's move on to my first argument here on economic growth and development. Okay, you listen. We tell you here on economic growth and development, we tell you that prosperity is able to happen on our side of the house because BRICS countries collectively represent a significant portion of the global economy already, which contributes even more to global economic growth and stability. They already have successful markets like China and Russia, for example, right? They contribute a lot to the economy, and even the US relies so much on China, but you can see that China doesn't rely on the materials from the US as much. We tell you how this benefits us because it improves our global market by increasing our trade because we have more options outside of the US to rely on. The increased intra-BRICS trade and investment flows we are able to provide them with natural resources that they require as well. But let's talk about the finance, for example, right? We tell you that institutions like the New Development Bank provide alternative sources of development finance, which support any infrastructure and sustainable development projects in any of these countries in BRICS and other emerging economies. Yes.
It's been 4 minutes and still no mechanism on how counterbalancing will work. Please engage.
We tell you this, right, because Malaysia is already in the process of joining BRICS, and we tell you that Malaysia does have the resources, and it does have what BRICS requires, like natural resources, right? We tell you that we've already provided this from the very beginning instead of. But let's move on to my second argument here on geopolitical influence. We tell you that BRICS, right, promotes a multipolar world order which challenges the dominance of Western powers in global economic governance. And we think they have the power to do so because the Western countries do rely on countries like China or Russia, for example, right? And we tell you that political cooperation is something that is extremely important here. Because on our side, we're able to enhance diplomatic ties and political cooperation among all these member countries, which facilitates dialogue on regional and global issues. This is something that we're able to have on our side of the house because we can not only engage with diplomatic ties or cooperation, we can also boom our economy on our side of the house. The thing here is that we have a backup here on contingent reserve arrangement, where they provide a safety net against financial crises, which enhances more financial stability and security among member states on our side of the house. We tell you for all these reasons here, right? We've already provided you on how we're able to enhance our economic growth and development because we significantly show you in like achievements that BRICS has created through initiatives like the NDP or increased trade, and we tell you that the geopolitical influence that BRICS has on our side of the house are able to challenge the Western dominance in advocating for reforms in global governance. We tell you that relying on the US or the Western countries won't make our economy boom, and we need to spark this change in order to make our economy grow faster and develop faster on our side of the house. We tell you it's exactly the development of Malaysia that's truly in the best interest of our side of the house. Never been proud of the proposal.
I think Prime Minister inviting leader of our whenever you're ready.
Am I audible on this volume?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, this debate is extremely simple. Government break down every single existing structure of Malaysian long-standing policy making with no inherent benefit and problem analysis in status quo. My speech today will consist of 2 parts. Number 1 on 6 layers of framing crucially missed out by side government, and number 2 on an argument on how Western isolation is likely to happen and its impacts in status quo. Now, firstly, what does BRICS actually look like? We tell you that BRICS is highly dominated by China and Russia because of the economic chokehold it's likely to have against other countries part of BRICS. We also tell you that it's an economic pact between member nations, which means members have to engage in economic trade deals more actively compared to the West. Number 2, on how there is a mutual agreement to trade in rubles and renminbi, which means that you will naturally phase out dollarization to a significant level if Malaysia were to join BRICS. Next, how does Malaysia's incentives actually look like in status quo? We tell you it's twofold. Number 1, on how they want to grow economically, and number 2, on how they want to remain neutral to all global superpowers so that they are able to get support from all angles. I tell you this is how the opposition will win this debate today. How does status quo look like? Status quo in Malaysia is that China is Malaysia's largest trading partner. We don't understand this need for an increase because it's already the largest. Number 2, on how major tech deals with the West happens, things like corporate investments, which I'll be talking about in my speech later. Now, how does this actually break down Malaysia's long-standing policy making for decades? Number 1, on how joining BRICS means that you are clearly aligned with the East. The opposition supports status quo where you are largely neutral towards both sides. Number 2, on how you're more likely to buy into Western, more likely to buy into Eastern influence because you have to align with their ideas to be part of BRICS. You have to align with their monetary policy if you are part of BRICS because of the economic chokehold that they have and for the many other reasons we'll be proving on side. Okay, what does joining BRICS actually look like? 3 levels. Number 1, on how you need to be part of the BRICS Bank. It means that you need to contribute your funds to that level. It means that your foreign reserves will be kept in the BRICS Bank for you to be part of that institution in the first place. Number 2, on how economic integration will happen, meaning that you need to increase the trade amount with BRICS partner nations, which we tell you is also significantly tied to China and Russia alone. Lastly, you need to prioritize BRICS economic agreements, for example, foreign direct investment or even trade deals, which you have to cut off Western influence. You cannot have both sides of the pie. You need to choose one side, and neutrality is the side that opposition chooses in this debate. Now, what exactly are the impacts of joining BRICS for Malaysia? We tell you that it does not get the best of both worlds because you naturally isolate yourself from the West. Because there is emphasis on the emphasis on trade with the West is entirely gone. Because you are prioritizing BRICS over Western economic deals when you are part of BRICS. It also means that funds will be kept in BRICS currencies, which means things like rubles remain things like renminbi, or even down the line a BRICS currency. Now, lastly, on how you are likely to buy into a less connected and less regulated bank. It's because the BRICS Bank will be inherently controlled by Russia and China because of the economic chokehold they have over the entire organization. It means that other nations largely do not have a voice because of their lack of economic capacity, because of their lack of political influence in this organization. It means we tell you that the World Bank is way safer because they will not do benevolent things to break down your economy and to force you into things because they want to get their money back and they have the incentive to continue their growth. We tell you that China simply wants to debt trap you and the West will never try is unlikely to screw you over for a few reasons. Number 1, on how the West is actually a bastion of morality. It means that the leaders in the West themselves do not want to be involved in bad things because there is pressure from the people on the ground, because there are more social movements and activists. Unlike in China and Russia, where every single movement, every single type of oppression, every single type of opposition is stopped by the government from the first place. We tell you that the World Bank has way more checks and balances with more countries for accountability. China doesn't care about checks and balances because foreign direct investment only makes up 2% of their economy and they make way more money off cheap labor. However, in comparison, the West actually cares about foreign direct investment, actually cares about the people on the ground because of democracy, because there are things like money from taxes from Google and Apple, for example. Now, moving on to my argument here. Now, why is Western isolation likely to exist? I told you that Western isolation exists because there is more funds in the East, number 1, and number 2, because there are fewer trade deals with the West, and number 3, on how you have a smaller part in the World Bank. We tell you cannot have the best of both worlds. Let's say Malaysia were to put 10 billion ringgit into a bank. You cannot put half in the East, you cannot put half in the West. If you were to commit 8 billion to the East, you are likely to only have 2 billion left in the international bank. We tell you that on scale, we win on this clash. Now next, the impact of Western isolation. We tell you it's extremely clear. Because say China screws Malaysia over, we tell you it's extremely hard that Malaysia is likely to go back into the World Bank. Because you already direct all your funds towards the East. It's extremely difficult for you to pull out the funds from the East and simply just join the West suddenly. Because the West also has lost trust in you because of existing economic structures and status quo that have been broken down and you have to be rebuilt. Things like trade taxes, things like trade agreements, which have to be rebuilt. You can't claim the benefits from both sides because we tell you that Malaysia wants neutrality and Malaysia has brought in significant economic investments from the US tech companies. You cannot tell me that the Western world is totally irrelevant in Malaysia's economy. Things like Microsoft, things like Nvidia, its highest investment year in 2023. These things create jobs. These things stimulate the local economy. Malaysia will lose out on this insofar as we align ourselves so significantly with the East. I tell you that we are unable to develop to the fullest extent because we unalign ourselves with our current policy of neutrality. See, neutrality is extremely important in this debate because neutrality means you have the best of both worlds. It means that not one side is going to cut you out. We tell you that in status quo, Malaysia is able to claim the benefits from the eastern side. Malaysia is able to claim the benefits from the western side because we do not align ourselves with one another. Insofar as you cannot prove to us how joining BRICS does not mean alignment, you do not win this debate. Now, what is opposition stance in this debate? Opposition stance is extremely simple. We want to maintain status quo of rapid economic development. We want to maintain neutrality. Gulf can't prove the huge problem. If Gulf can't prove the huge problem in status quo towards Malaysia and neutrality, you lose. Because I tell you that the structures of this debate rely on government trying to prove to us that this is actually so bad. And I tell you how, right? The entire case of this counterbalance does not work because in number one, there is simply no map and it's just a meta concept with not a Malaysian specific context. Because I tell you, counterbalance fails when you are so tied to the east. This does not work insofar as you do not prove significant Western dominance on Malaysia. Malaysia in status quo is free to trade. Malaysia in status quo is not locked up by the West. Yes, the West might have more influence on the world, but it does not mean it has more influence over Malaysia. So proud to oppose.
I thank Leader of Op, inviting Deputy Prime Minister when you're ready.
Alright. Am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Alright. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. The downfall of side opposition starts when they want to take a half-half stance of neutrality. We tell you that this is a harm for all the reasons I'll tell you later. On opposition, they need to contend in a world where there are currently these multifaceted problems with our economy and, for example, the dollarization, right? This is what they have to defend on their side. They never want to talk about it. A couple of observations and responses to the context and argumentation of opposition. Firstly, I'd like to talk about some issues and a few problems they have set up. Opposition makes a fatal flaw here when they want to claim that the only way for us to succeed is to be neutral. We don't want to join anything, we just want to be us. The economy is stagnant, we tell you that. We think that given that Malaysia is currently in a process of joining BRICS, for example, we think then there's a crucial reasoning as to why our governments are supporting this. And how then does it benefit Malaysia as a whole? We tell you, one, the reason why we need to improve our economy is simple. One, Malaysia is known for a country with low GDP, for example. And two, we need to catch up or we'll forever be left in the dirt. We think that BRICS then is a given opportunity for us to then advance economically. They never want this to stand. We think the economic structures of China and Russia can actively help us, right? We understand that there are harms of like them saying like, oh, China and Russia is a dominant thing. But we think that because China and Russia are able to help us, we don't see why it's so harmful to them. For example, China is known for trade, and Russia is, for example, known to export energy. We think that then, when we are able to join BRICS, we then have to have this cooperative deal for them to be able to like help us out there. When we go, they are not incentivized to help us. We don't get any economic growth in for that. We think that this is something we uniquely have when we join BRICS. They then have to prove to us the harms of this, not just by saying it's symmetric or else they lose entirely. Secondly, then, let's talk about the de-dollarization, because I think this is something extremely crucial that they have to tackle with. One, given that we have already told you that one of the main reasons for the formation of BRICS is to have the de-dollarization, because the dollarization is something that is actively dominating the whole world. We think it's a harm and we don't want that. Secondly, we think the comparative of ringgit Malaysia and the dollar is incomparable, because it's like 4 times more than ringgit, right? So if you don't try to stop it and you have no mechanization tool, it looks like Malaysia economically suffering from this. We then cannot keep up. This is something that they have to defend with, or else they cannot win. Why then do we need to have a de-dollarization matrix? And how is it only that our side can achieve this? Why? We think we need monetary policy independence. What this means is we need to actively reduce the dependency on a foreign currency, for example, like on their side. What then is the benefit from this? We think that we're able to do things like adjust interest rates and manage our inflation. This is something that they cannot have because they're actively dependent on the dollarization, and because the dollarization is then going to dominate their entire world there. Secondly, then, financial stability. We think that we're only able to strengthen our domestic financial system when we reduce our vulnerability to external shocks, for example, fluctuations in the value of foreign countries. That is entirely happening on status quo. Our side is the side that takes a step towards national sovereignty and economic autonomy for the betterment of Malaysia. Now, a few issues then with their speeches.
Dollarization is not when a country currency is 4 times stronger than another country. It's when a country has a chokehold over another nation, and this is what doesn't exist in Malaysia. Please explain.
We tell you that the dollarization is already having a toehold on all of these countries. We tell you that Malaysia is at a disadvantage here because the comparative is extremely large, right? So we say that when the dollarization is going to dominate the entire scene, for example, in Malaysia, we're not able to keep up. Our economy is increasingly going to devalue on your side of the house. So then a few issues then in their speech, right? One, they say that China is already our trading partner. We don't need BRICS. We think that when we are able to join BRICS, we then are able to strengthen our relationship and strengthen our ties there. Secondly, they say that the West is unlikely to screw you over. This is untrue for two main reasons. One, you have to understand that all the US wants is to assert their political dominance. This looks like them forcing their liberalism on conservative countries like Malaysia. This is directly a harm, right? Secondly, it is historically proven that, for example, in the Middle East, right, US has bombed countries like Iran because they want to push their influence on liberalism, and when they don't want that, they bomb countries there. This is a harm, and we don't want this to happen. We don't need the West because, like they said, we already have China. China is a huge trading partner for us. We don't need the West there. Thirdly, why then can we trust China, right? In the 13 years of trading with China, they have yet to assert any sort of political dominance onto us. And we think that then this is a benefit for us. When they say that they want a neutral stance and they want to side with the West, sure, side with the West. But these are the harms that they have to acknowledge that on US having to assert their political dominance and, like, for example, liberalism on their side of the house, you cannot debate in a bubble there. What is the comparative then? We think that on our side, our economy is able to grow, right? Because we tell you that we have metrics, for example, China and Russia helping us with the economy, and we think that this is a benefit there. They then tell us that neutralization is being neutral is important for whatever reasons they bring up. Then you have to be neutral or else one side doesn't want to help you. We think this is inherently untrue because in the status quo, China is helping us and is a huge trading partner. We think that we are only able to benefit more from this when we join BRICS and able to we think that we're able to benefit from this. When we join BRICS and we have these economic powers unto us. Understand that BRICS, the main reason for the formation of BRICS is to enhance the cooperation and to promote this economic growth within neighbor countries there. We think that economically, we're able to then improve our economy. We don't see anything on their side of the house. What their side wants to say is they want to stay stagnant and they want to live in the status quo, right? They don't also give a mechanization on how their economy is going to improve that. Given that we tell you that Malaysia's economy isn't something that is very good right now, and given that we need to keep up in the economically fast-paced country, we need to then do something in order for our economy to advance. Their side doesn't give you a metric, and that's why they lose. For all these reasons, you must side with government. Thank you.
I thank Deputy Prime, inviting the Deputy Leader of our already.
Oh.
Can I be heard at this volume?
Yes.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Side government is the equivalent of not getting approved for a loan and going to an alley and asking money from a loan shark. Don't let their big words fool you. They do not know anything about BRICS. Their biggest harm for us is if we don't join BRICS, the US will bomb us. Their biggest harm is that they will be constantly put in a position of inferiority in BRICS, and that's why we're so proud to oppose. We took a simple stance. Do not side with an organization that isolates you and is almost certain to be bad. They have not engaged with any of our mechanisms so far, and insofar as they do not, they still stand. Before I move on to one argument on sustainability, I think there's a few responses we have to make. Firstly, on the counterbalance mechanism. Secondly, on reliance on Western countries. Thirdly, on neutrality. And then one clarification on why China is bad. And I'll also be talking about stagnation and this mechanism of dollarization that they want to bring up. Firstly, on counter mechanism. Because no, they have not given any mechanism criticism from all two speakers so far about how counterbalance is going to work. So I'm forced to assume, if they mean that, oh, if China is bad, then we can just go back to the West, that's completely wrong. Because as Keegan told you, you have to pour money into banks for them to accept you, which then means that there's no mechanism of counterbalance. Once you opt in, you cannot opt out. That's why we say it's wise for you not to opt in. This is not something where you can opt in for fun. It is a long-term commitment that is almost certain to put you in a position of inferiority. Secondly, their mechanism of counterbalance is also problematic because it's not an assumption that you can switch. It's incredibly difficult. Secondly, on reliance on Western countries, I think it's incredibly ironic how 7 minutes were on reliance on Western countries, but they never dealt with the comparative, which is over-reliance on China. They never talked about why China is likely going to be a morally sound actor. We have provided you many reasons, which I'll be explaining in my speech. Why is China have the opposite incentives to help you? Firstly, their main goal right now is to expand regional influence. Secondly, they do not care about foreign direct investment. They care about regional influence and debt trapping the countries they are loaning money to. Thirdly, they gain nothing from trading with Malaysia. Yeah, sure, it's a market, but if they wanted to, you could just scrap Malaysia off. I don't understand. Their only argument for this is, oh, but China is being nice now. Where is your incentive for China to be nice tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? They've never given any incentive for that. But thirdly, they tell me that the US just wants to assert liberal dominance. Okay, they still have to explain why the US doesn't have more checks and balances than China does. We've told you many reasons. Firstly, the US is a Western liberal democracy. If the US, with its huge media attention, is doing things to other countries that people are not happy about, social activists, and people call them out on media, as opposed to the CCP, where literally every single part of the media is controlled by China, you cannot tell me that that is better. On neutrality, they tell us that there is no such thing as being neutral. Fine, we are okay with taking 100% of all funds from the World Bank. We still think that that is better. Secondly, they've never engaged in our argument on how the World Bank has more funds. So unless they want to debate this in third, it still stands. Onto stagnation and dollarization then. They tell us that we're going to be stagnant and the dollar is going to get worse. Yet I'm left at a loss as to how the US dollar actually gets better on their side. How do you improve anything on your side? Because they have run a solely negative case at the side of government as to why the dollarization is getting worse and worse on our side. Yet there is no solvency on their side. So unless they prove this, and our arguments on how you'll be put in a position of inferiority still stand, this cannot be credited. Secondly, we can still get money from the World Bank and Malaysia's currency is going up. So I don't see why stagnation is likely going to happen on our side. We would rather develop slowly than be at the mercy of bad trade deals. On to my argument then. Before that, any points? Okay, thank you. On to my argument on sustainability. Why is unsustainable trade deals likely going to happen with China? Firstly, why is China not sustainable in of itself as an actor? Firstly, China's economy is in crisis. It has a property crisis such as the company Evergrande going bankrupt. Secondly, there's a huge debt to GDP ratio. They invested too much in their Belt Road initiative and now all the countries are defaulting on their loans. We're left at a loss as to whether China actually has the money to continue financing all the projects that Malaysia's idealistic view in government wants to provide. But secondly, China is also headed by an irrational actor, i.e. Xi Jinping, who wants to be a new leader. The major difference between Xi Jinping and Western leaders is that there is no check and balances keeping Xi Jinping in order, because Xi Jinping's strength is that he does not care about human rights abuses, unlike the West, because the public does not hold him accountable. We tell you that this is dangerous because the alternative of this is that economic trade deals are likely going to be bad. And when it's going to be bad, no one is reporting that Malaysia is getting screwed over by China because no one cares, because the CCP controls every single aspect of the media. Why is this important? Because Malaysia wants to develop. Not here. All of their arguments are contingent on the fact that China can and will help them. We have definitely disproved that China will not and does not want to help them, and even if it wanted to, it may not have the capacity. They have to engage in third. Okay, Malaysia wants to develop. Therefore, they should not risk being involved with actors that do not have the capacity. There's a few impacts that could stand for this. Firstly, they run out of money because there's no more projects to fund, because the BRICS Bank is made out of 6 countries as opposed to the World Bank with 100 countries. This means projects are likely not going to have follow through, or China just pulls out funding. And hey, when China pulls out funding, money, you cannot do anything because there is no media reporting, there is no checks and balances, there is no mechanism of counterbalance from your side. So you have two outcomes here. Either China has money and no regulations, which means that Malaysia will be debt trapped by bad economic trade deals. Or secondly, maybe China really wants to help, but they do not have the capacity because they are in their own property crisis and providing money to Russia, who is in the middle of a war that they are losing, by the way, on the comparative here. The US dollar, while it is still increasing, is still more sustainable than whatever they want to push. More funds in the World Bank means that we have more funds to finance the projects that we want to run. Institutions on the World Bank also have more regulation because they have a lot more media coverage, whereas China is censored, which then means that if the IMF wants to, if the World Bank wants to do something like put Malaysia in a position of inferiority in the trade deals, that means that there's still more media coverage. It's still more likely to have checks and balances. What have we brought you here? We brought you a very simple case. If you do not have enough money and you do not get approved for a loan from the bank, do not go to a loan shark and get your money from them. It's incredibly dangerous and it's incredibly foolish. At the end of this debate, we provide you structured reasons as to why China is a terrible actor for you to integrate yourselves closely with. We brought you Western isolation. We have brought you the different reasons why China is unsustainable, and also a bad actor. They've never engaged and they've never talked about the mechanism of counterbalance on their side. And as long as they've never engaged with this, they lose.
I think the law inviting government whenever you're ready.
Relationship already because they see that now you're remaining neutral, you're making trades, you're making partnership with both sides, right? They will never ever think that you're gonna be loyal to them. That's why we say that we need to pick a side, we pick BRICS. They talk about our balancing mechanism. We told you from first that we never wanted to align ourselves with the US, right? The moment we join BRICS is the moment we put our trust, our votes and our bets on China, on Russia, on India, etc. This is something they never wanted to engage with. They wanted to push us to a position of neutrality. That was never the stance that we wanted to take. Now, first, let's talk about dollarization, right? How we tell you that this is the biggest thing, like this is the extra point that we bring from our side of the house. They don't understand. We tell that in status quo, the dollar is used as a currency to make trades, etc., etc. That means the dollar, which is the currency of the US, has a lot of power in determining like making taxes and stuff like that. Basically, the economic development as a whole, like on a global scale, right? When we allow dollarization to further develop, and when we take a neutral stance and we only support, like we don't talk about anything, we don't speak about anything. This is when the status quo, that is when things will happen going down the hill, right? We tell that it's a slippery slope that they push themselves onto. We tell that at the end of the day, we see that BRICS, the main initiative that they want to take is to de-dollarize. Because why? They think that, for example, gold is the best currency to be used in status quo. Because why? Every country has it. You don't have to buy dollar from USA. That means they don't have to be the global economic, the economic kings in the entire world, right? We tell you that's something they never want to engage with. Now, let's move on to what is the best interest of Malaysia. First, let's talk about economically, right? What does Malaysia really want from BRICS, right? It's not just about ideologies, alignment, and stuff like that. We think the main thing, the main message, literally in the info site that already says, is to better ourselves, put ourselves in a position
that we can better in terms of economy, right? And that is better because why? We see countries like Russia and China, yes, they can argue that on their side you get benefit of the two benefits from like US and also from China, right? But we tell you already that when you align yourself in a situation where you remain quiet, where you trade with both sides, where they are already enemies, right? They won't want to trust you, they don't want to give you the benefit as a whole. We brought to you how Russia, how China, they are already global like economic superhouses, and as long as we align ourselves, we put our trust into them, they will better ourselves at the end of the day, and we'll make better trades with them. Now, secondly, sit down. Now, secondly, on alignment, how we carry that the main message of BRICS, right, is not on ideologies, you know. In this debate, the main part of the debate that we want to talk about is on the economical stance. The arguments that we provided to you, how you can better us economically, and how dollarization plays such an important role in this status quo, because we tell you gold is accessible every single way, not just dollar, it's only accessible in the US. That puts them, that if you make it dollarization, it puts them at a higher position where they're able to exert themselves economically and even politically, as we have seen that. I'll touch on that later on. But now, first on ideologies, right? We tell you that communism and stuff like check and balance is not even the topic that we're going to talk about in today's talk. Because you see, countries that are democratic, including Malaysia, including India, including South Africa and Brazil, right? These countries are democratic countries, they are willing to join BRICS. That just proves that BRICS is not trying to spread their ideology, spread their country of like what's about like communism and stuff like that. This is not their main incentive, they just want to make money through these trades. Now, and also to neutralize like Western countries. Now on check and balances, they said on our side we have no check and balance mechanism at all, right? We proved them wrong because why? We said that BRICS is literally the check and balances that exist. Because when you want to make trades with other countries, you have to be transparent to them, you have to open up to them and tell them that and not let them know that you're trying to backstab at the end of the day, right? We see that that is what countries like USA are trying to do. We give you an example from first, how the USA helped Afghanistan during the conflict in the Middle East. They use this not because they want to trade, not because they want to help Afghanistan, because they want to negotiate Afghanistan to lower their price oil, to sell to them so that they can get economical benefits, right? We tell them when Afghanistan said no, they blame Afghanistan for all of the excuse to move Afghanistan military, and they conquered certain regions of Afghanistan to steal oil, and also the same to Iraq and Iran, right? How we tell them that they literally use us as pawns. How they can never ever provide, notice how their entire case never provided a scenario or a case where like China ever backstabbed us from the back, because we told you from second that in the 13 years of trading, they never once backstabbed us, only wanted to make money from us. They traded not only with just communist like republic countries, but also with countries that are actually democratic at the end of the day, because they really want to make money. And other than that, how we tell that at the end of the day, they brought up World Bank and stuff like that, right? We tell that literally why we want to go into BRICS is because they have the same alignment, they have the same goal that they can work towards together. This is something that is more efficient. So working towards the goal of getting economic development is something that is easier that can be done. Whereas the World Bank, it literally encompasses like the entire world, a lot more countries, and inferiority. And we tell that this puts Malaysia at a weaker stance. How we tell that GDP, right? In our world, that we tell that Malaysia has already a very low GDP. How at the end of the day, right? If they go in, they're not able to work together because they don't have the same goal, the same alignment. Now let's talk about geopolitical stance. We tell that the reason why BRICS was also formed, other than that, was also because they wanted to continue. That's because they wanted to neutralize the West, right? How we tell that the West is already like a very big economical power. How if you just remain neutral, or even worse, try to align more with the US, you're gonna make them literally make us as pawns and puppets at the end of the day, and that's likely to happen. When we see wars nowadays, US secretly aiding them because of their own benefit. How they aid the Ukrainian war, how they aided Ukraine just because they want their dollar, right? They want to continue to dollarize their dollar, right? Because at the end of the day, they're not trying to help you just because they have the incentive to like make you a better country at the end of the day. What they want is to create their own economy, make their economy higher, not just in terms of economy, but also in terms of political stance at the end of the world. If we submit to them, we literally allow them to take over, become the mastermind of every single sector that we are in. At the end of the day, we're able to provide you the benefits of all this. The comparative is then, we tell you that the USA, we tell that on their side, they literally crawl into the trap of USA because they think that USA are being nice person. When from first we told you they're not nice person, they're just making trades with you because they want to align themselves, they want to put them in a better position. At the end of the day, we have take this debate.
Then I'll wave outward whenever you're ready. Yes, correct. Give it to me.
My speech begins in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I'm at a loss for words after the 3 whole prep speeches. What actually is the problem with Malaysia and status quo? Stop running your meta that US is bad case with no contextualization. My speech today will consist of 3 parts. Firstly, my responses. Secondly, the question, and lastly, my word comparison. So first, my responses. They say that remaining neutral does not benefit anyone. They say that it is impossible for us to trade with both US and Russia. This just goes to show the lack of spec knowledge that they have on the global trade market. Because global economic trade does not rely on political relations. Because if they are, then why is the US still China's biggest trade partner? Secondly, we tell you that China gains more when it debt traps countries because now they own the pot. So we tell you that it's not their goal to form economic relations with other countries, but it's their goal to monopolize the entire global trade market. And thirdly, on dollarization. They say dollarization will happen and will cause harm on Malaysia. These impacts only materialize when you have significant opposition to the US. For example, Russia and Iran. There is zero problem with the Southeast Asian model. Southeast Asian model, the US needs C as a significant market. Where the impact of dollarization has the possibility of materializing is on your side to be directly aligned with the East. Note how Malaysia is already part of the dollar network and you have laid the groundwork for your loss. And now moving on to the clashes. What this debate really comes down to today is which side is better for Malaysia as a developing country. We tell you that Malaysia is a developing country and we don't have the capacity to be involved in political discourse. What are the 2 goals of Malaysia in today's debate? We tell you it is to number 1 to develop and number 2 to remain neutral because linking back to number 1, this is the best way for them to be able to develop. I'll put it to you in 2 layers of analysis. On the first layer of analysis, Malaysia will be powerless in BRICS. On op, we tell you that China and Russia will completely monopolize and take advantage of the other BRICS nations to their advantage because they know that Malaysia joins BRICS to gain benefit from themselves and they want something in return. So China and Russia, being the global powerhouses that they are with the upper hand, will use BRICS and use any way to take advantage of them. What's to say that China won't make a deal with Malaysia in exchange for building military bases in Malaysia? Because we already know that China has no check and balances in place, like seen from the 9-dash model. Now, secondly, BRICS will be dominated by China and Russia because they will put the most money into BRICS and therefore they will have the most say and will be able to monopolize it. You have to know that China is in this to gain more support from the other countries since they're already so isolated from the rest of the world. They're already doing well economically and there's almost no economic incentives in the BRICS movement other than to broaden their support in the world. So on your side, Malaysia has no power or say in the policies that BRICS brings up. This is because Malaysia's aim to join BRICS in the first place was for economic growth and with economic growth, but we tell you that they will come out with more harm than good. We believe that our alternative is better because it's better. Secondly, Malaysia will gain more harm than being in BRICS. There's nothing stopping China from debt trapping Malaysia because of the lack of check and balances in place. And China simply does not care. Russia simply does not care because they've already turned their backs on the world. What's to say that Malaysia will have no escape from this because the moment they join BRICS, they've turned their backs on the world and the rest of the world, like the IMF, the World Bank, will not accept them anymore. So when they leave BRICS, you think that these other organizations will accept them? We tell you no. The bottom line is development is stunted when developing countries opt into politically charged economic integrations that roll out the West and bring economic harms like tariffs and quotas.
while loans from the IMF have more conditions and are often biased against countries like Iran, there's still more checks and balances in place against bad governments when they're forced to loan from them contrary to BRICS, which has no regulations in place. It's ideal for developing countries like Malaysia to maintain a neutral stance in order to be able to grow by exporting, because they will be able to export to other countries if they are not sanctioned, and they'll be able to loan from other countries or receive financial aid. But they can't do that when the West doesn't like you. So now moving on to my word comparison. In their best case scenario, China somehow will treat them really, really nicely. We tell you that this is totally impossible from what we have seen in status quo, right? But let's say that their case lies. Why is this still bad? China has a limited economic capability. Would you rather take a 30% stake in the world's market, or work with the World Bank where they have a majority share? In fact, Malaysians aren't able to claim. Inside government, Malaysians aren't able to claim the benefits of both worlds. We prove to you that in status quo, Malaysia can claim benefits from both worlds by being neutral, because as a developing country, we believe that it's better and to take the safe route than to take a major gamble and take part in BRICS. Now in the worst case scenario, Malaysia loses its on our side. Our worst case scenario is that Malaysia loses its chance of economic cooperation with China. We concede that, but we conclude that, insofar as they prove to us that insofar as they haven't proven, and they don't prove to us that if the harms of status quo today, they have lost this debate. Before I move on, any POIs? Okay, although in status quo, Malaysia loans from the World Bank, and the World Bank relies significantly on the West, and does have Western influence. We tell you that this is still more neutral than working with the World Bank, because in the World Bank they're heavily monopolized by China, and with that I've never been funded to work.
Then I'll reply whenever you're ready.
Can I be heard at this volume?
Yep.
Okay. I switch to start in 3, 2, and 1. The moment DPN stood up and said the exact same opening line as the speaker before her, I understood that they do not fundamentally understand this case. Their biggest harm is that the US dollar will increase on our side. Our biggest harm is Malaysia gets debt trapped and put in economic trade deals that are certain to give them a negative impact for many years to come. And that is why it is something that never disproven. I'm still left at a loss as to what the main impact they're trying to achieve is. Because if all they talk about is the problems with de-dollarization, when they never provide an alternative, I'm left at a loss as to what they want to do. Do they want to make the ringgit as rich as the US dollar? Because I'm going to tell you now, that is impossible and something that's very hard to prove. On to 3 things I'll talk in my speech. Firstly, who has power in BRICS? Secondly, the checks and balances. But before that, I'll be calling out their technical errors. Firstly, they have a complete lack of engagement, right? We tell you structural reasons why China has incentives to not be nice to Malaysia, for lack of a better word. They've never actually told us the inverse, except for saying China is good because it's good right now. I question the structural analysis behind that. We didn't get any. It's far too little, far too late to engage in Gulf reply. The lack of their engagement stands clear. They do not know that China is most likely not going to help Malaysia. They do not know that China has more to gain from not helping Malaysia, and that is what I'm going to talk about. But firstly, who has power in BRICS? Because they've never engaged in this. The people who have power in BRICS do not have the best incentives of Malaysia. Malaysia definitely does not have the most power in BRICS because firstly, we have a way lower financial capacity than countries like China, and that analysis was ignored. But secondly, we tell you that this means that they are going to be forced into worse trade deals, like I said in my speech. But let's just assume their best case. China is good for a while. Then I still don't know whether they can ensure the sustainability of this help, because we still question whether the funds are actually enough to continue doing this when 5 countries are the only ones contributing to the BRICS Bank. I question whether this is actually going to happen. And as we've already proven, you cannot opt into both sides because both sides require you to put in money, and that's something that's impossible for Malaysia. Secondly, on checks and balances, and I think this is the most crucial thing that we're going to talk about, because they said that they want ideological similarities. Firstly, we're not debating about ideologies for the fun of it. What our side was doing was drawing parallels and explaining why US's ideology of democracy and being a better moral bastion keeps it in check. Specifically, the media on Western-dominated countries like the World Bank is specifically the checks and balances. They keep it from screwing Malaysia over. So if they don't have this, and you assume that both sides are malevolent, then the side that wins is the side that has the better checks and balances, and that side is our side. The only analysis for this is China is good because everyone is joining BRICS. If 5 people jump off a cliff, will you jump off a cliff as well because you think that is the right thing to do? Absolutely not. We've already given you the structural incentives as to why China is bad. Their only response to this is, but everyone is joining BRICS. Okay, then you join BRICS then. Both are false, so who is better? US is better because there's more checks and balances. I'd like to note here that they say that China wants to trade, and that's why it won't hurt Malaysia. China wants to trade, but it gains more from that traffic. And economical debates are not about being your friend and backstabbing. It's about who gives the most advantage to China at the time. So sure, maybe China is getting something from trading with Malaysia, but at some point, owning a port in Malaysia is going to be more important to China as well. So we say that this is something that you have not proven throughout the course of this debate. On to dollarization thing, because I think this is the last leg of their debate. Dollarization means that you're cut off from the US dollar because the US dollar is steadily rising. I'd like to point out here that dollarization is likely going to be worse if you isolate yourself from the West and you cannot participate in the US dollar market. So I'm left at a loss as to why dollarization was even the impact in this debate. Our stance is clear. We take down all of their points and they have not engaged with the mechanism that China is a malevolent actor. We have not engaged with checks and balances. They have not engaged with the many mechanisms that China has to keep it from helping Malaysia. And as long as they do not engage with this, they do not stand in this debate. I'm so proud to oppose.
I think I'll reply. You have to reply whenever you're ready.
Opposition built the entire case line and jumped off at the very tip of it. The moment they say they need the US is the moment they lose. Because we tell you all the harms of having the US and being neutral is bad. But later on, elaborated later on in my speech. But first, let's talk about what's truly in the best interest of Malaysia. They told us that we're going to be put in a position of inferiority because we're over-relying on China, right? But we tell you it's still better than over-relying on the US because they're more likely to invade and exploit us. So that we've already provided you substantial analysis on what's in the best interest of Malaysia. But first, let's talk about economic growth. They tell you that it's in the best interest Malaysia to join the World Bank, right? The fact that the entire case like is contingent on thinking we need the World Bank, for example, we told you that we don't need to because we have BRICS. They literally considered that neutrality isn't enough. It's status quo because they need the World Bank, right? And here's the thing on how the World Bank caters to people. The World Bank, they already considered from the beginning. The World Bank has hundreds of countries to cater to. What makes you think that we'd be one of the priorities there? And secondly, on inferiority, right? When they consider inferiority exists, Malaysia is more likely to feel inferior then because they never actually improve or maintain the issue. They make it worse on inferiority then. And secondly, on actually having a voice, right? We tell you here on transparency, right? It's a huge thing on our side of the house, and we do have to be loyal, so we actually have to guarantee economic partnership, right? They never actually prove how on their side of the house the US won't backstab them or whatever trading partners you still trade with them then. They never actually have a check and balance because the unique benefits on our side is as follows. When we have enhanced cooperation, this means that we enhance the cooperation that already exists, right? Because on our side, we actually show loyalty and we actually show full transparency, and that's how trust is actually earned and our benefits are guaranteed because that's literally our check and balance, right? And they can never get this benefit on their side of the house because opposition never actually proved and never actually shows loyalty and what they gain from neutrality. On their side of the house, they're harping on the fact that, China is so harmful, right? They never actually show us then what they benefit from having the US or being neutral on their side of the house. There's no check and balance actually. There's actually no check and balance on their side of the house because they don't trust, because it's more likely that these countries won't trust Malaysia when there's no transparency or loyalty being shown. They say that China is only good for now, but as for the US, they've never been good from the very beginning. They never proved how Malaysia won't even be used as partners then. They never actually contended on the point where the US has never been good and they've never actually proven how they will benefit from this debt. We're telling you that we're siding with China because China is literally helping us right now. For the past 13 years, they've been trading with us because they see the economic benefit for them. That's why we've all constantly shown loyalty, and they've never even done anything. They've never, even historically, right? They've never shown or even actually invaded or forced their political ideologies on any of the countries compared to the US. The unique comparative here is on our side of the house. We actually show you why. We've actually proven to you why joining BRICS is actually acts as a check and balance, and we show you the unique and economic development that we will gain from this debt. On their side of the house, they've been harping on the fact that joining BRICS is bad, but it's never proven to us why status quo, neutrality, or even the World Bank would end up improving the economic situation on their side of the house. For all these reasons, right, proposition has to win because we hold the best interest of Malaysia, and we are the only side that will actually achieve economic development. For all these reasons, proposition has to win today.
Thank you guys for playing and thank everyone for a very honest debate. You guys can close the floor, shake hands, pack your bags, and then leave to the APH hall where I'll announce the verdict there.